For the third year running, I'm setting off on a week-long multi-venue, multi-species road trip. Full of enthusiasm and anticipation for a good trip. The first venue is a nice easy one to start. 114 acres, full of weed and crayfish, and the weather is looking off the chart. This should be a breeze. Hello and welcome to the 2020 road trip. I'm really excited to say that I've got 6 days ahead of me. You might have seen my previous video when I went to Todburn Manor that I talked about this session, and it's finally come around. So I've got 6 nights, 3 different venues. I'm fishing with my mate Matt, so we'll talk to him later on. And the first 2 days we're on Bradley's Lake. It's absolutely ginormous, bigger than anything I've ever fished before. 114 acres I think it is. Supposedly there's a really good stock of carp in here, although the crayfish are a bit of a problem, so I'll talk you through how I combat the crays. And we've got 48 hours on this lake, so I'm going to be having a little lead around. I've got my lead ready to go there. I'm going to be having a lead around now, try and find a clear spot, and then I'm going to be mixing up my bait, so I'll show you what's in my spod mix and everything, and then I'm going to be getting some bait out there and getting some rods out there. So really excited guys, 48 hours on the big pit, can't wait. Let's get finding a spot. Right guys, what I'm just doing here is I've seen a tree on the far margin, which is a really good spot to aim at. It's always good to have a far margin horizon marker. So what I'm doing is casting towards that tree and then pulling back in a line towards the bank and just seeing if there's any harder areas, you know, where the lead skids a lot smoother. I haven't found any gravel yet, but I'm not particularly looking for the gravel because I think the crayfish find it a lot easier to kind of feed in the gravel and stuff. But there's a bit of weed close in, you know, sort of 50 yards out, and I pulled through that a couple of times and dragged in a load of weed, which I've now got in the margins, but that's good because it's kind of cleared the way for if I do hook a fish, you know, I've got a clear line out. But yeah, feeling the lead down, it feels about maybe 15 foot or so. But what I might do in a minute is put on the marker float, because it'd be good to find any changes in depth if there's a bit of a plateau or something that I could fish on top of. I reckon that'd be a good spot. Right guys, here's a little tip for you. So I've just been using a bare lead here for casting out, as you saw, and I want to put a marker float on. Now instead of having to retie it, what I've done is I've got just a loop to loop, so I've got a fairly long loop there, you can just about see, and I've left a little tag end of line there, so I can pull that and it undoes the knot really easily, and I can just take that off and then I can slide the lead up the line like that, and then you want to just put a bead onto the line with the baiting needles easiest. So that goes through there, right? So then you got a bead, and then literally all you need to do is put the float on the end, and then the advantage of that long loop is that I can put that over the float, bring it down and put it onto there, and then as soon as I want to take that off again, I've got this little tag of line that allows me to undo it again. Right, so I'm going to stand on the end of this sort of brick way that's been built, and that's going to be my casting spot every time I cast out now, so I can be really accurate when I'm fishing clips up. And I've got my marker float on, so I'm going to bang it out and see what the depth's like out there. So in line with that tree in the far margin, that donk down on the bottom. So I tighten the line up, make sure that the float is right down on the bottom by the lead. Then I'm going to pay off line 1 foot at a time. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 18. So the float's just popped up at 18 foot there, which is really deep. Don't really want to be fishing at that sort of depth this time of year, so I'll wind it in, and I'm going to go a bit longer, a bit further out, and see if I can find something a little bit shallower than that. So let's see. So that went down with a nice dunk there, and it's nice and clear as I expected, but it'd be interesting to see what the depth's like, so hopefully I can get the float up. 1, 2, 13, 14, 15. Oh, it's about 15 foot out there, so actually that's not a bad area to be fishing, I think. Right guys, been faffing about for quite a while trying to find the spot that I want to fish really, and as you saw, it was quite deep at you know, sort of 80 yards, and then you go really far and you can find 12 foot, but tomorrow the weather's going mental, you know, we've got 50-mile-an-hour wind, a big pressure drop and everything, and I don't fancy hitting that extreme range in those conditions, so I've decided to come a bit closer in and basically fish just over the back of a weed bed that I found. So one thing I need to do, I've got my inline leads, as you can see there, which I usually fish. I think because of the weed I want to switch to lead clips, because I want to drop the lead so the fish comes up in the water when I'm playing it, you know, if I get lucky and catch one. Right guys, another nice little tip for you here. Similar to the marker float setup where I had a loop to detach my lead, and I can put my marker on and I can also put my spot on there. This is my inline setup at the moment. I've been using it with tail rubbers because I ran out of the other little bits that I used to use, but I have got a video on my inline setup if you want to look on my channel. But yeah, what I've basically done is I've got a loop to loop on my leader here. So this is the angling iron Gravitate lead-free leader, and it's you know, nice and abrasion resistant, and it sinks really well, so it's good to have a bit of that on the end of your line. But you see how I've just loop to loop that swivel off there. That means I can take off my lead, and then all I need to do is thread on a tail rubber and a lead clip. and then loop to loop a swivel with a quick link on the end. And that's your finished setup. It's important to keep everything accurate, so wrapping around your distance sticks and marking your line is a must. Check your rigs in the edge and cast towards prominent horizon markers, so even in the dark you can hit the same spot every time. Right guys, so I've got my 3 rods out now on my spot, and I'm just about to get my bait out over the top. Now Bradley's is a massive water, it's 114 acres. There's a lot of different species in here, not just carp, you know, you've got a lot of tench, a few bream, crayfish are a big problem. So your bait's going to get eaten by all of those things, and there's lots of smaller fish like silvers, you know, roach and stuff. So the idea is to put a lot of bait out, not only to draw the carp in because it's such a big water, but also to kind of feed off those nuisance species, and hopefully when the carp arrive there's a bit of bait left. So I'm just going to make my bait mix now, so I thought I'd run you through it because I'm going to make up enough for the whole session, so hopefully won't have to do it again throughout the course of the session. But I've got my bucket down here, so the next time you hear me I'll be talking you through what's going into the bucket. Right guys, so as you can see in the bucket here we've started off with a load of sweet corn, so that's about 3 tins of Jolly Green Giant sweet corn. There's not a fish that swims that doesn't like sweet corn, and it adds a bit of colour. So yeah, I've gone in with sweet corn to start with. Next up I'm going to add some of the Pure Bait Concepts amino ester boilies. You can see those there. They're like a nutty bird food type bait. On here with the crayfish, I think if you put fish meals in, you're just going to end up drawing the crays in. So I'm going for like more of a milk protein and bird food type bait to hopefully attract the carp and not the crays so much. So in goes a load of them. I'm probably going to put in a good sort of 2 or 3 kilos. Give that a bit of a mix. Right, next up I want to do a big shout out for Mr. Dan Kilgore, who sorted me out with some particles, big dog particles, they call themselves, and he is Dan Kilgore on Instagram. So I've got one of his mixed, or 2 bags of his mixed, I think it's called Garlic Buzz. Looks like it's got hemp in there, maize and different bits. There's tigers in there, and it's in a load of liquid, so that's going to be really good to soak into these boilies. So let's get some of that in there now. Right guys, I had to zoom out a bit because we filled the bucket so much you couldn't actually see the whole thing. But what I'm just doing now is getting them boilies up from the bottom, put some mixed size in, so there's 18s as well as 15s, just you know, giving a bit of a mixture of sizes for the fish to think about. But yeah, I'm going to just keep mixing that, and then next I'm going to add some of the Pure Bait Concepts amino ester food liquid. I just want a bit of smell, a bit of a scent trail in the water, so I'm using liquids to kind of soak into the boilies, and then hopefully they'll leak off smell to keep the fish, you know, to pull the fish in from a distance. So the more liquids the better, really. Add a bit of a cloud to the water and draw the fish in, hopefully. So a bit of this. Now lastly, Dan Kilgore has also sent me some of his finest tiger nuts there. They look absolutely amazing, don't they? They're sort of in a load of juice, and they are literally ready to pull carp in from miles away. So put some of those in. So I've just added the tigers there, guys, and I'm just going to give that a good mix now and then get some out in the lake. Hopefully tonight or tomorrow morning we'll have a nice big fat carp to show you. With a lake of this size and the big head of large carp, it's important to put a lot of bait out to try and bring them in. Also with very few features out in front. The bait needs to stop them in their tracks and hopefully get a positive feeding response for long enough to get a bite. Right, good morning guys. As you can see behind me, it's a real grey, moody day today. Perfect big pit conditions. We've got low pressure coming, the wind's supposed to pick up later, and it's been raining all night. And I'm actually quite surprised to say that nothing happened through the night. But you know, it is the first night on a massive water that I've never fished before, and who knows, we may have got the location wrong, but looking at the weather and the way the wind's going to turn, we feel like we're in the right area for when that does happen. So, you know, we're still going to stick with it. Hopefully the conditions do what they say they're going to do, and we've got a good chance later on or tonight. But yeah, time is ticking on this session. So yeah, this morning I woke up and all my bobbins were at the top, and I came and had a look, and there's a massive weed bed came and sort of went through all my lines, and everything was a mess. So I sort of redid all my rods at about 6 this morning, which I didn't really want to do because, you know, bite time can be around that time, but I thought if I'm not presented I'm not going to get a bite anyway. So I went out in my waders and pulled all the weed off my lines, and then clipped them up, wound them in, and got them back out on the spot. So fairly confident now that everything's presented. I'm going to be showing you my rigs a bit later on when I wind in to redo them for the night, so stay tuned for that, guys. And yeah, I'm just enjoying being here. It's an amazing bit of water, somewhere that I'll definitely come back to on another session, I'm sure. But for now I think it's breakfast time. Got some bacon which I need to eat because that's going to be going off, but nice little treat for the first morning of this week. As I said earlier in the video, this is my road trip, so this is a 3-part little series. I've got 3 different venues. We're going to be fishing on the River Wye, and then we're going to be fishing a place called Hawcott Lake for the weekend. So that'll be, you know, 3 separate videos, barbel fishing. So this video, barbel fishing on the Wye, and then Hawcott Lakes. So if you want to see those videos, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss them. And yeah, keep watching because we're going to be talking you through my rigs, and I'm also going to show you my spot, you know, give you a bit more detail about where I'm fishing and why I chose where I chose. So yeah, we'll keep everything crossed, and we'll keep you posted if anything happens. Ah, a lovely bit of breakfast, and everything is looking good for a bite. What could possibly go wrong? Confidence is high, it just has to happen. Right guys, we've just got a bit of rubbish weather at the moment. It's been raining pretty much off and on since 1 o'clock in the morning. So I thought I'd take this opportunity to run you through my swim choice and spot choice. So basically we went on this side of the lake, because as you can see the wind is kind of coming towards this side of the lake. It's southwesterly and it's going more westerly later, which should be blowing straight into this bank. And on a big lake like this, you kind of want to follow the wind, because that's what the fish are going to do, hopefully. As the water's sort of blown with the wind, it kind of carries food with it, and it can stir the water up on the windward end and get natural food sort of stirred up into the water, and the carp come and feed, because they know that's what happens. So we've kind of followed the wind basically, and these swims were available, and it kind of made sense. We haven't seen any fish show since we've been here, so all we could go on really was the wind. And we know, looking at the forecast, it is due to go a bit more westerly, so it should blow in our faces a little bit more later on. And spot choices, you saw earlier on, I sort of led in around, and it was fairly featureless out at range, you know, kind of 120 yards all the way back into sort of, you know, 60 yards. There wasn't much in the way of gravel or weed or anything. The depth, the further out you went, it got a bit shallower, but I didn't want to fish too far out, because I know that wind's coming and I probably won't be able to hit the distance. I'm not a particularly big caster, so I opted for kind of 60 yards. So there's this tree here that I'm just aiming at. I've got 3 rods in a line, one to the left of it, one to the right of it, and one right in the middle. My rods are about here somewhere, where that little wind line is. It's about 60 yards, and in front, this side of my spot is a bit of weed, and I figured that it's a bit of a patrol route along the edge of the weed, so I've just gone sort of over the top of a weed bed. My lines would be nicely hidden over the weed, and my rigs hopefully sort of sitting nicely on the spot where the fish will hopefully patrol along the weed. So that was my thinking. It's nice and clear out there, you know, it lands with a bit of a donk and it drags back nice and easily. No gravel or anything, but I didn't find any gravel out in front of me at all, so I was quite happy just fishing on the sort of firm silt really. And yeah, and then I just put out quite a lot of bait over it, about 10 kilos of mixed bait, as you saw. And that's really the tactics for the session really. I'm just going to stick with it. I'm going to bring the rods in early afternoon, and I'll show you the rigs when I do that. And I'm going to get a bit more bait out for the night, and yeah, same tactics again. If we're not seeing fish showing anywhere, we've just got to kind of stick to our guns and hope that the fish do get on this wind later. So yeah, I thought I'd just update you where we're up to for now. Not a lot's happening. It's wet and windy, and it's due to get worse later, so that could be fun. But it's really good fishing conditions, so we are still very hopeful. I'm going to try and have a chat with Matt in a bit, because we haven't spoken with him yet in this video, but we have met him in previous videos. But he's fishing a similar tactic, similar range as well. And we're fishing plastic baits, as I said, because of the crayfish, but I'll show you my rigs a bit later on when I wind in. And yeah, hopefully we'll get a chance to speak to Matt. Right guys, the weather is really turning now, as we predicted. The wind's picking up. You can't really tell on camera, but it is pretty mental out there. There's white tips on all the waves and stuff, and just thinking I need to get all my rods sorted and refreshed, ready for tonight and the morning. So I've just brought in my first rod, and I thought I'd show to you what I've been using on this session. Well, I was using bunny rigs with size 4 hooks, but the baits weren't quite buoyant enough to pop them up, so what I'm going to do is switch to my favourite withy pool rig, and that is an imitation oily on there, and it's nicely buoyant enough to pop up that size 6 hook. And then I've got a shot there to balance it, because apparently tungsten putty gets pulled off by the crayfish, so this is sort of crayfish proof if you like. The withy pool rig, because the shrink tube can't lose its shape if the crayfish mess around with it. You know, if you fish like a hinge stick, it can sort of kink your upright section, or even your boom section, you know. But I've got coated braid there, going to
shrink tube, and then I've got my imitation boilie, and what I've done is I've sprayed that with Pure Bait Concepts amino ester bait spray, just to give it a little bit of smell, because I didn't have all that much confidence just fishing plastic on its own. So this is what I'm doing for tonight. Instead of my Ronnie rigs with the size 4 continental hooks from Angling Iron, I've scaled down a bit to the size 6 curve shanks, Angling Iron again, but on a wiggy pool rig, just because that's what I had tied up really. And yeah, I'm going to get all 3 rods in now, change over to these rigs, and I'm going to put a load more bait out, because I'm hoping the fish are going to be hungry with this weather and the pressure drop. They really ought to be getting on the munch, so if I get enough bait out there, there's a good chance for a fish later on. So stay tuned guys, I'll keep you posted. I'm just about to have some lunch, and then I'm going to get all the rods sorted for the evening, and then perhaps we'll have a chat with Matt tonight if the weather's not too bad.
Okay, so it looks like the weatherman got it right. This is going to make things interesting. Maybe I've bitten off more than I can chew. I'll have to keep at it and hope the carp gods will reward my efforts. I didn't come all this way to give up without a fight. Well guys, I thought I'd just show you how mental the weather's getting. We've got crazy water out there. It probably doesn't look like it on camera, but there's actual proper waves coming across the swim now, and it's bringing with it big rafts of weed. Don't know if you can see sort of down here, there's loads of weed sort of all in the margins, and that's made it impossible to keep the rods in really. So I've wound in all my rods at the moment, because the lines were just getting pulled around by the weed, and all the bobbins were going at the top, and the tips were getting pulled around, and you know, it's just not working for me at the moment. So I think what I'm going to have to do is get in with my waders again and clear all this weed in the margins, and I'm going to put the bait out for tonight, so another sort of half a bucket worth, 10 kilos, which is a lot I know, but it's a big old lake. And then I'm going to get the rigs out for the night. So I've got my 3 with the cool rigs, like I said. 2 are on fake boilies, and 1's on like a double bit of fake corn, and that's going out over the same mix you saw with the big dog particles. Cheers again, Dan Kilgore. Yeah, tigers, mixed particle, hemp, all that sort of stuff, and boilies, quite a lot of boilies in there as well. So yeah, fingers crossed guys. I've just got to sort out my life at the moment. We've got this mental weather that's come in, which is great fishing conditions, but it's making it hard to do what I want to do at the moment. So I'm going to get a load of bait out, and then sort out getting the rods out, and then yeah, we'll catch up to you a little bit later on. Right guys, as promised, I was going to introduce you to my mate Matt. If you didn't see last year's road trip, then you wouldn't have met him before, but here he is. Hello Matthew, how are you? Right.
Good, windswept.
Yeah, and how are you feeling about Bradley's Lake so far?
Yeah, a bit indifferent at the moment.
Yeah? How would you describe the fishing? Moderate to difficult?
Pretty difficult.
Yeah.
Lots of weed coming through, lots of wind.
Lots of crayfish.
Lots of crayfish to deal with, quite challenging.
We actually haven't been fishing for the last 6 hours or something, because we can't keep the rods in the water. But what have we got next this week? Can you remember?
Yeah, a couple of days on the Y. We're going to bag up on the Y, hopefully.
Yeah, so if you guys have seen my previous road trips, me and Matt have done a couple of barbel trips the last couple of years, and how many fish have we caught, Matt?
A small number.
A very small number, but this year is going to be different, isn't it, mate?
It is.
So we're going to the Y. The conditions actually look quite good. The river's going to be fairly good level and a bit of colour in it, hopefully. So fingers crossed, mate.
Yeah.
So yeah, stay tuned, guys. I'll update you before it gets dark. We're going to try and get the rods out in a bit. Hopefully this weed's going to move away, and then yeah, hopefully we'll have a carp to show you. But if not, make sure you subscribe so you see part 2 where we're going to be barbel fishing on the Wye. Right, the current situation is that we can't really even get the rods out. The weeds get so bad. Apparently the boat club has cut all the weed last week, so there's lots of floating weed, and this wind's just bringing it down the lake past our swims. And you know, if you cast out over the top of all that, you're not going to be able to sink your line, and then it's going to be drifting and pulling your line out of place. So real tricky conditions. You know, it's bad enough with the wind and the crayfish in here, but that weed is making it literally impossible to fish at the moment. So yeah, we've had our rods in since about lunchtime, because we wanted to obviously check the rigs and everything, and put a bit more bait out, as you saw. And now we're just waiting for that window of opportunity when there's not any weed going past to get the rods out for the night. But yeah, it's going to be a nightmare, because if we have to recast in the night, we're not going to be able to see if it's clear. You know, we're not going to be able to see if there's any weed in front, so we're going to be casting kind of blind, really. So we need to get the rods out before it's dark. But yeah, I'm just waiting for all this weed to pass, and then hopefully I can get the rods out quickly. Gonna have to get my tips really low in the water so that any drifting weed goes over the top of the lines and not through it, you know. But yeah, that's where we're up to. I thought I'd just update you guys. Sorry there's not been any action so far, but I hope you appreciate it's you know, one of the hardest sessions I've ever had to fish, really. And yeah, there's not much more we can do at the moment, so I'm just gonna keep watching that weed, and hopefully I can get my opportunity before it's too dark. Well, that was relentless, but we survived to tell the tale. Fishing was impossible last night, but there's still time to make it happen, and we definitely won't give up till the absolute last possible moment. Well, good morning, guys. Unfortunately last night I got the rods out kind of just before dark. I thought the weed had passed through, and actually managed to keep them out for a good hour or so. And I was just sat in Matt's swim, just having a chat, having a bit of a social, and I got a couple of beeps, so I came down and had a look, and the rods were literally pulled off the alarms off to the side, and bent right round. Luckily I've got the Jag rod lockers, so they held my rods on the backrests, but I had to sort of wind them in. Pulled in loads of weed as well, and also loads of line and a lead. Someone's inline lead with loads of line must have snapped off at some point and got stuck in the weed, and then I've pulled all that in as well. And I just thought, actually last night with that weed coming through and the wind and everything, I'm just going to keep the rods in for the night, get a good night's sleep, and get the rods out this morning. So that's what I've done. I've literally set my alarm for 5:30, got up, and it's a lot calmer this morning. The sort of water's calmed down loads, and it's a really nice morning actually, and everything's dry, which is a godsend as well. So yeah, I've got my 3 rods out now, and I've just put the last bit of my bait in, which was about 6 bombs worth, just so there's a bit of fresh bait down there in case like the crays and the bream and tension and everything have smashed it in the night. And we've got about 6 hours left to make something happen. So basically yesterday brought the rods in at lunchtime, and we weren't really able to get them out again until this morning. So we've had, you know, half the session pretty much not fishing, which is really annoying. But that wind was just savage, and the waves and weed, it just wasn't fishable yesterday. There was a guy who came down
says he tench fishes here, and he was thinking of having a session, but he took one look at it and said he was going to leave it a couple of days because apparently the boat club, the sailing club, has cut all the weed recently to make it easier for sailing, but they've left these big rafts of weed everywhere, and when the wind blows it's blowing it down the lake, and even with your rod tips really low in the water, the weed's still picking up your line, and then it collects and ends up just pulling your line around, and you know, it can pull your rod off your alarms, as I found out last night. And it just, you know, you can't fish like that, especially overnight when you're trying to sleep and stuff. Your rods are just getting pulled in. It's not the one, is it? So I've had to just wind them in. So I wasn't fishing last night, so obviously no fish to report, but we still have got a chance now, and you know, tactics are all the same. It looks really good actually, you know, nice ripple on the surface still, but it's a lot calmer. There's no big waves anymore, and I'm fairly hopeful. You know, bite time, they do say, is kind of any time in the morning up till about lunchtime, so we're going to leave the rods in now for the next sort of 5 hours or so, have a slow pack down and move on to our next adventure, which is going to be the River Wye. So as I said, this is a 3-part mini series of the road trip, and this has been part 1, Bradley's Lake, and I hope you appreciate we've put in the effort on this session, you know, and it's not been easy. Just had a little bleep there, but I think it's possibly just a bit of weed again. But yeah, it's not been easy at all on this session. I would love to come here again. It's an amazing place. Perhaps I could come later in the year when the weeds died off, or maybe like in the spring before the weed fully grows. It'd be nice to have a session on here because it's not actually that far from Southampton when I get off the ferry, so I think I'll definitely be back. But that is going to be the end of part 1 of the road trip, so I hope you've enjoyed it, guys. I'm sorry there's been no fish. Hopefully the sort of the atmosphere and the size of the place has been entertaining enough to watch, and the struggle that we've had with all the weather and everything. But please remember to subscribe to the channel so you get part 2, which is barbel fishing on the Wye. And then we're going to be going to Hawcott Lake, which is again in the Cotswold water park around this area. There's a lot of lakes around here, and we're going to give Hawcott Lake a go. Apparently it's fairly well stocked, but people tell me it's not as easy as you think considering the fish that are in there. But we're going to give it a good go. We've booked onto there, so we can't change our minds now. So yeah, that's going to be part 3. So give a thumbs up, guys. Leave a comment if you know, if you'd like to sort of talk about anything in the video, any questions as well. I'll try and get back to you, and yeah, I'll see you in part 2 where we're barbel fishing on the River Wye.